My name is Naomi, 31 years old. Last month, I stood on the porch of the ranch I spent a decade maintaining, only to be handed an envelope by my own sister's lawyer that read, "You are no longer a beneficiary." No warning, no explanation, just silence. That land was my life. I rebuilt it when our father left. I stayed through wildfires, floods, and years of backbreaking work, while my sister sent curated updates from her condo in Dallas. Now she owns everything. Before I continue my story, where are you watching from? Hit that like and subscribe button. If you've ever been betrayed by your own blood, trust me, you'll want to hear how this unfolds. The day my sister's lawyer handed me the letter that made everything make sense and broke me in half. "You are no longer a beneficiary," it read. Just 10 words on a page, printed in sharp serif, delivered without eye contact or apology. No signature from her. No explanation from my mother. No call from my father. The ranch, the one my grandfather built, the one I kept alive through 10 summers of drought and 2 wildfires, had been transferred into my sister Bianca's name 6 weeks prior without my knowledge. Apparently, our parents had signed off on it. Consolidation for legal efficiency, the letter added coldly. I stared at the page, barefoot in work jeans, dirt still under my nails from shoveling post-storm debris. The lawyer stood stiffly at the gate, waiting for me to say something. But there was nothing to say. The betrayal was too clean, too practiced. No shouting, no slammed doors, just a paper trail that said I didn't exist. I had spent the last 11 years living on this land. After Dad left, I dropped out of school and came back to help. Bianca was in Dallas, getting her degree in political science, posting brunch selfies and rising through social circles, while I patched fences, harvested pecans, and drove Mom to every doctor appointment she forgot to schedule. I knew every turn in the gravel driveway, every crack in the barn walls. I knew which trees had survived the blight, which ones needed watching. This land breathed with me, and now it belonged to someone else. Not just someone. Bianca. I wasn't even angry at first, just stunned. She hadn't returned my last 3 texts, hadn't visited in months. When I called our mom 2 weeks ago and asked about Bianca, she said she was busy with campaign work. I didn't realize campaign work meant consolidating family property to boost her donor credibility. I stood there in the Texas heat as the lawyer excused himself, slid into his black Lexus, and left without so much as a backward glance. The dust from his tires hung in the air like a bad omen. Inside, Mom's voice floated from the living room like nothing had changed. "Naomi, dinner's getting cold." Cold. Everything was cold now. The woman I had fed, bathed, defended for years could look me in the eye and pretend she hadn't just watched me get cut out of my own legacy. When I walked in, I saw her glance at the envelope still in my hand and then quickly look away. "Bianca's coming by on Sunday," she said. "We'll talk then." I left the letter on the kitchen counter. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't demand answers. I walked to the barn, fed the horses one last time, packed 2 duffel bags, and left before the sun went down. I didn't know where I was going yet, only that I wasn't staying anywhere I had to beg to belong. The truth is, Bianca never wanted the ranch, until it could do something for her. When Dad left us, I was 20 and halfway through art school in Colorado. I dropped everything, came home, and started working sunrise to midnight just to keep the place above water. Mom spiraled into depression, the bills stacked up, the fences collapsed, the roof leaked, and I learned to fix it all the hard way. I wasn't trying to be a martyr. I just didn't know who else would do it. Bianca, meanwhile, was getting internships in city council offices, tagging inspirational quotes under her sorority photos, and visiting home only when a photographer came with her. She'd stand next to Mom by the gate, hand resting lightly on her shoulder, smile soft and wide, and post it with captions like, "Grateful for where I come from, never forget your roots." People in town ate it up. They'd stop me in the feed store and say how proud they were of Bianca's service, her sense of family. I'd nod and pay for my parts in cash, knowing that she hadn't contributed a single hour or dime. When Mom was diagnosed with early-onset Parkinson's, I spent 4 years juggling ranch maintenance, full-time caregiving, and a side hustle repairing saddles to buy her medication. No one asked where Bianca was. No one cared that I missed birthdays, relationships, and every dream I once had for myself. I did the work in silence. I held Mom's hand when she couldn't hold her own spoon. I called Bianca once when Mom fell in the tub and I didn't know what to do. She sent flowers. The next time she came back, she arrived in a tailored pantsuit, trailing a man with a campaign pin and a notepad. "He's just a donor contact," she told me. "We're building a platform on heritage preservation. The ranch makes the perfect symbol." I watched her pose in front of the barn I'd rebuilt with scavenged lumber. She wore cowboy boots with tags still on them. I should have known then what she was planning. But when you've carried the weight for so long, you don't notice when someone starts cutting your name off the deed. You just keep carrying. Until one day, the burden disappears, because they've decided it never belonged to you in the first place. I hadn't spoken to Elias McCade in nearly 10 years when his name showed up in my inbox with the subject line, "Saw the news. You okay?" He didn't include a greeting, just a timestamp and a phone number. Typical Elias, blunt, cautious, emotionally efficient. Last I heard, he'd been disowned by the family for turning down the oil lease deal my uncle tried to rope him into. They called it a betrayal. He called it environmental integrity. We were only a few years apart growing up, and back then, he was the one person who didn't flinch when I talked about things like art, architecture, or building something that lasted longer than a vote cycle. I once loaned him $600 from my college refund to help him get a bus out of town after his stepdad cracked his ribs. He paid me back 6 years later with a handmade cedar toolbox and a note that just said, "You saw me." Now here he was again, reaching across the void at exactly the moment I needed someone to believe me. I didn't hesitate. I called. "They cut me out," I told him. "Bianca's name is on everything now. Land, trust, even the tax filings. I didn't even know the papers were drawn up." "You're not the first they've done this to," Elias said. "Just the one who gave them the most." We met 2 days later at a cafe off a service road halfway between Austin and Kerrville. He looked different, cleaner cut, law degree stamped into every word. But his eyes hadn't changed. Still sharp, still scanning for the exits. "You want it back?" he asked before the waitress had even poured our coffee. "I don't want revenge," I said. "I want what's mine, and I want them to know they didn't erase me." "Good," he said, pulling a folder from his briefcase, "because I've been building something for people like us, people who get used up and written out." Inside was a proposal, a nonprofit disguised as a sustainability incubator, structured to train displaced ranchers and craftspeople while reclaiming abandoned land through conservation. It needed a project site. It needed a face. It needed someone who'd already done the hard work. "You don't have to sue them," Elias said. "You just have to beat them at their own game, quietly." I didn't need more time. I said yes before the waitress brought the check. Within a week, we signed a lease on a parcel of scrubland 10 miles outside the county line, land my family had laughed at when I once suggested converting it into a regenerative grazing co-op. Now, that land would become the foundation of something they wouldn't see coming, and I wouldn't have to lift a finger in their direction. I'd just have to build. Build better. Build louder than they ever allowed me to speak. The land was rough, uneven slopes, broken fencing, patches of mesquite thick enough to disappear into, but it was ours. Or more accurately, it belonged to the nonprofit, which meant it didn't have my name on it, didn't connect back to me, and wouldn't ping on any property watch list Bianca's campaign staff might have set up. To the outside world, I was just a contractor Elias brought in to manage local restoration. Quiet, off paper, invisible. And I liked it that way. We started with salvaged materials from a decommissioned dairy barn 50 miles south. I drew up the layout for cabins, a wind-powered barn, and a sustainable grazing grid using a mix of hand tools and CAD software I hadn't touched since I was 19. The funding came from small donors, mostly people Elias had helped over the years, retired farmers, displaced native land stewards, even 2 ex-veterans who'd lost their family homesteads to foreclosure. We called it Willow Rise. Publicly, it was pitched as a rural innovation site for underserved communities. Privately, it was a proving ground. Every structure I built, every contract I wrote, every blueprint I designed was a brick in the case I was building. Not a lawsuit, but a truth they couldn't silence. Elias handled the legal scaffolding, making sure all documents were airtight, untouchable, and legally fortified. Meanwhile, Bianca's campaign trail was heating up. Her social feeds were full of posed hay bale shots, carefully curated rural upbringing speeches, and smiling endorsements from city donors who'd never been within 50 feet of a real cow. But I noticed she never once returned to the ranch. Not in person. Not on video. I wasn't sure if it was guilt, strategy, or fear that kept her away. I didn't care. I was already 6 months into a build that would outlast her headlines. What Bianca didn't know was that one of the original ranch hands, Hector, who'd been let go during her so-called restructuring, was now helping me full-time. He brought tools, stories, and the kind of quiet loyalty that doesn't come with contracts. "You doing this to take her down?" he asked one evening while we poured concrete for the new barn foundation. "No," I told him. "I'm doing this so she knows she never took me out." That night, I filed the paperwork to open Willow Rise for its first public tour. I didn't attach my name to it. I didn't need to. The land would speak for me, the people would carry it, and Bianca would see it soon enough, standing tall, rooted in the soil she tried to steal out from under me. Bianca's face was everywhere by fall. Yard signs, mailers, high-gloss banners flapping on courthouse fences. Her campaign slogan was a masterpiece of irony. Rooted in the land, raised by the people. And yet, not once did she mention my name. Not once did she acknowledge that the land she was using for political theater had been my life's work. But I wasn't waiting for recognition. I was waiting for the right pressure point. It came when a well-known regional journalist contacted Willow Rise asking for an interview. She'd heard about our eco-build from a donor and wanted to profile our community for a piece on Texan revivals. I let Elias handle the vetting. He sent her documents, permits, before and after photos. Nothing flashy, nothing combative. Just truth. Layered, undeniable, and quietly damning. 2 weeks later, the story dropped. Front page of the Sunday section. The land that came back to life, and the woman who was written out of it. My name wasn't in the headline, but it didn't have to be. The opening paragraph painted a picture that even Bianca couldn't spin. A woman cut from her family's estate, now quietly leading one of Texas's most promising land restoration collectives. The article never accused Bianca by name, but it didn't need to. The timelines, property transfers, and quotes from community members did the work for us. Hector's voice came through strong. She kept that place breathing when everyone else walked out. Other neighbors chimed in anonymously about political theater and a daughter erased. Bianca's campaign went silent for 48 hours. Then came the denial. Her team released a press statement calling the article a misrepresentation of the family's shared journey and claimed that I had willingly exited the estate for personal growth. I didn't respond. Instead, I posted a single video to Willow Rise's page. No narration, no drama, just a drone shot of the land, the cabins, the people working. At the end, a close-up of a carved wooden plaque I'd made and mounted near the entrance. Some things grow stronger after they're cut down. That was all it took. Comments flooded in. Shares skyrocketed. Donations quadrupled. And most importantly, local watchdog groups started asking for campaign audits. 1 week later, Bianca's biggest donor pulled out. 2 weeks later, a whistleblower leaked emails showing that she'd used family assets as leverage for endorsements. She didn't lose the race that month, but she never recovered. The polls collapsed. Her speeches dried up. And by November, she'd vanished from public view. I never said a word. I never needed to. I had already spoken in the only language she and our parents never understood. Quiet proof. Built. Lived. And too solid to be erased. 2 weeks after the article went viral, my mother called. I let it ring. The voicemail she left was short, strained. "Naomi, I think we should talk. Things got out of hand." Then came the letter from Bianca. A cream-colored envelope, no return address, but her handwriting was unmistakable. Inside was a single page, no apology, just a plea. "I didn't mean for it to end this way. Maybe we can meet. Just us." I read it once and slid it back into the envelope. There was no anger in me anymore, just an emptiness where loyalty used to live. You don't rebuild bridges that were never made for your weight in the first place, and you don't re-enter rooms where you've only ever been a ghost. I forwarded the letter to Elias without a word. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and blocked her number again on our shared line. No drama, no second act, just silence. But this silence wasn't hollow. It was full. It was the sound of boundaries held, of choices made with a calm hand. That month, we hosted Willow Rise's first official community harvest. I watched volunteers move through the gardens I had once envisioned only in sketches. I saw families eating at picnic tables I helped build with calloused hands. I stood beside Elias and the people who had shown up, not because they shared blood, but because they shared belief. Belief in work, in land, in earned trust. The local mayor gave a speech that night under the open sky. She talked about legacy, about how some of the strongest roots grow quietly beneath the surface. I nodded along, not for the praise, but for the truth in it. I wasn't interested in revenge anymore. Bianca had already lost more than she realized: credibility, community, and the sister who once would have defended her through fire. I didn't need her downfall to validate my rise. I'd already arrived, quietly, steadily, without applause, without permission. And as the fire pit glowed and kids roasted marshmallows in a circle around the coals, I knew one thing for sure. Some silences aren't empty, they're earned. And the deepest revenge isn't vengeance at all. It's indifference wrapped in peace. The kind they can see, but never touch again. The following spring, a girl named Marisol, 11 years old and barefoot, stood beside me in the workshop at Willow Rise, turning a piece of cedar over in her small hands. "You really made this whole place?" she asked. I smiled and handed her a chisel. "With some help." She nodded, serious beyond her years, and started carving her initials into the edge of a garden bench. That moment stayed with me, not because of the bench, not even because of her question, but because for the first time I felt the shift in legacy, not a line of inheritance, but a circle of impact. I used to believe legacy was something passed down by blood, preserved by signatures on property lines and holiday portraits. But now, standing in the heart of something I'd built from silence, I saw it for what it really was. Legacy is what you plant when no one is watching. It's the things that keep growing long after you've stopped needing recognition. Willow Rise expanded that year. We added 2 more cabins, a greenhouse, and a communal art studio open to locals. We hosted restoration workshops and youth programs on sustainable farming. People started calling it the land that listens. The name stuck. My father sent me an email once around July. No subject. Just 2 lines. I heard what you've done with the place. Your grandfather would have been proud. I didn't reply. Not because I was angry, but because I didn't owe closure to anyone who'd opted out of the story years ago. I'd stopped looking for approval the day I realized I was the one doing the work. And the people who showed up, people like Hector, Elias, Marisol, and the dozens of volunteers who kept coming back, they didn't need me to prove my worth. They saw it. They lived it. They shared it. Bianca never contacted me again after that last envelope. I heard through a reporter she moved to Atlanta, rebranded her career, and got involved in private consulting. Maybe she tells herself the article ruined her. Maybe she forgets me entirely. Either way, I'm not in her story anymore, and she's not in mine. One morning, I opened the notebook I used to sketch in when I was 19. Inside, I found a forgotten line I'd written in the margin of a page. One day, this land will love me back. I smiled, because now it does. Not in applause, not in ownership, but in roots. In laughter on the wind. In benches carved by little hands that know exactly where they belong. Betrayal often doesn't come in the form of raised voices or slammed doors. It arrives folded in legal language, disguised as practicality, or delivered with a smile. In Naomi's story, the deepest wound wasn't losing land or title. It was realizing that everything she'd given her life to was quietly being erased by those who shared her blood. But this story isn't just about betrayal. It's about the precision of response. Naomi didn't scream. She didn't sue for spectacle. She rebuilt quietly and fiercely, using her silence not as surrender, but as strategy. And in doing so, she exposed the truth. Real revenge isn't about hurting others. It's about becoming someone they can never diminish again. The lesson here for all of us is this. When someone takes your place, your voice, or your history, and rewrites it to serve themselves, you have 2 choices. Fight them on their terms, or rise on your own. Naomi chose the latter, and in doing so, created something unshakable. Her sister lost a campaign. Naomi gained a legacy. This isn't about being better than them. It's about becoming whole without them. The people who silence you do so because they fear what you might say. But silence used with integrity is not weakness. It's the sharpest knife, the one they never hear coming. And sometimes, the most powerful answer is no answer at all. How this applies to your life. If you've been overlooked in your family, career, or relationships, ask yourself, am I trying to be seen by people committed to looking away? Focus less on forcing people to acknowledge your value, and more on building something that reflects it. Instead of reacting in the moment, respond with intention. Let your progress be the statement. Choose your circle. Not everyone deserves access to the version of you that keeps growing. How to get started today. 1. Write down one space in your life where you've felt erased and what truth needs to be reclaimed. 2nd block. One source of noise, a toxic contact, social media feed, or guilt loop that no longer serves your story. 3. Take one concrete action toward a quiet goal, something that will matter in 5 years even if no one claps today. Have you ever rebuilt yourself in silence after a betrayal? How did you rise? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story gave you strength or clarity, please subscribe, share it with someone who needs it, and stay connected for more. Sometimes, the family you build after the betrayal is the one that finally sees you.